Hello, everyone, and welcome into our last regular season SCPI Southern Section Laxcast. I'm Sarah Chafee, joined as always by our lead analyst, Jim Loftus. And Jim, it's crazy that we're here already, but like I mentioned, this is our last regular season Laxcast. We're going to do things a little bit differently. Come next week, we're going to give you more of a playoff preview, but as for this Laxcast, we're still going to do things pretty much the same way that we have ending the regular season with our top 10 rankings, games to be on the lookout for. Though some teams have wrapped up their regular season, some teams have not. So we'll still preview some important games, and we do have movement in the top 10, which is always fun. So let's get it started, Jim, with our boys' top 10. This is week 8. At number 10 this week, we have Chaminade. Number 9, Oak Park. 8, Westlake. 7, Harvard Westlake. 6, we have Santa Margarita. I'm excited to talk about that one, Jim. 5,
I'm sure you are.
5, we have Tesoro. 4, we have Foothill. 3, Loyola. 2, St. Margaret's. And at number 1, we have Palos Verdes. Jim, let's break down our boys' top 10. We have some couple of changes, and I feel like we need to address this Santa Margarita situation because we received some words.
Yeah, there were some Santa Margarita folks not happy still being on the bubble last week. You know, that being number 11, if you will, wasn't quite the same as being in the top 10 for them. And honestly, the logic in leaving them out of the 10 last week was they had 2 good wins over top 10 teams. They had just beaten Harvard Westlake. It was 10-8, so close game at home. So they had that advantage. Harvard Westlake had the long bus ride. And then their other win was against top 10 win was over Trabuco Hills, which actually came way back in the beginning of the season. And so, when we do these rankings, we try to look at overall body of work. We try to give credit for head-to-head. We try to give credit for strength of schedule. And at the time, in putting this together last week, I still felt Santa Margarita hadn't really done enough to crack the 10. This week, we looked at it again, compared the schedules side by side, and Trabuco did everyone a favor by losing to Tesoro. They're still 11-4, but that gave us a reason to look more closely at them. They had been at the number 10 spot. Let's see, who else lost? Oak Park lost a couple. They had been at 8. They lost to Palos Verdes. No shame in that. Then they lost to Thousand Oaks, which we've talked about a little bit before. Thousand Oaks is an interesting story. Toughest schedule in the LA area, 4th toughest in all of the southern section, and they've struggled with injuries. But now they're healthy and playing well. So again, not a whole lot of shame for Oak Park in losing, but it gave us another reason to look at them and maybe drop them down. And so, as Santa Margarita beat, who'd they beat? Mater Dei. They took overtime last night to beat Servite, which sort of had me thinking that maybe they're not all that worthy of jumping up as high as we have them here. But ultimately, we put them all the way up at number 6. They do have the head-to-head with Harvard Westlake, so it would be tough to drop them in there behind Harvard Westlake. Harvard Westlake last night won a Mission League semifinal over Chaminade, but had to come from behind in the last minute to do it. It's the second time they've done that to Chaminade. So Harvard Westlake's good, but they're also showing that they're vulnerable. So we give Santa Margarita credit for having beaten them last week. Anyway, that's kind of the long story of how Santa Margarita goes from the bubble to number 6. They got a little help from Trabuco losing, Oak Park losing, Chaminade losing, giving us reason to drop all those teams down a little bit and reason to move Santa Margarita up. So Santa Margarita is a good team. They do have a couple of signature type wins this season. They also have a bunch of signature losses. I think all 5 of those losses are to really good teams. So if you go 2-5 against the very best, how high can you climb in the rankings?
Right.
Maybe number 6.
Right. And still at our number 1 spot, Palos Verdes, they're rolling. They're 15-3. They beat Oak Park, San Clemente, and Peninsula. And St. Margaret's right underneath them. They did lose to Torrey Pines, but that's one of those really lethal San Diego teams. right, down there. So, and Loyola, same thing, beat San Clemente and beat Crespi. So, do you foresee any of those shifting at all? Or Jim, do we? I guess we can talk about that when we preview the week ahead. But do you feel confident in these top three teams?
I do. I mean, even in the top four, Foothill sitting there at four. I don't know that those can change much in the next week as we head into the playoffs. It would not be surprising at all to see those two or those four rather as the Orange County and Los Angeles finalists in a couple weeks after the playoffs work through their first three rounds. There's certainly teams that can surprise and pull an upset. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if those four are the ones left standing for the LA and OC finals.
Right. Okay, I kind of want to shift to our girls' top 10 because we do have a few changes as well. Let's start with number 10. We have San Clemente. 9, we have Kate School. 8, Aliso Niguel. 7, Trabuco Hills. 6, Santa Margarita. 5, Palos Verdes. 4, Redondo Union. 3, we have Foothill. 2, Mater Dei, and number 1 is St. Margaret. So, Mater Dei, Foothill, let's talk a little bit about that because Foothill lost to Mater Dei and Mater Dei beat Trabuco Hills. So there's a shift there. And when we preview the games to come, St. Margaret's will be playing Foothill. But we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the top of the girls' top 10 and then the bottom because we still have all that craziness going on at the bottom of the top 10 as well. But can you kind of break down what's going on in our top three?
Yeah, we had a little bit of movement at the top. If you recall, Mater Dei opened at number 1, defending champs, and we finally bumped them down a little bit after a few losses. Now they've beaten Foothill this week, and they've climbed back up to that number 2 spot. So Mater Dei's, certainly no fluke. They've played a really tough schedule. Those 6 losses are all to really good teams. So the win over Foothill boosts them a little bit. We had another head-to-head at the 4 and 5 spot where Redondo Union and Palos Verdes met again, second time. Palos Verdes had beaten them and jumped ahead of them in the rankings. This time it was Redondo coming from behind to win what sounded to me like a really exciting game. You can read the write-up online on the site. I didn't get a chance to attend it. So that bumps Redondo up a little bit. The next movement again was sort of at the bottom. Those teams that just keep beating each other: Trabuco Hills, Aliso Niguel, and San Juan. Ultimately, this week San Juan lost to Trabuco, and they did beat Tesoro, but at 8 and 7, felt like keeping them hanging around in the top 10 when some other teams like Kate School from Carpinteria are sitting at 13 and 0. A few other LA-based teams. Westlake is 12 and 1. West Ranch is 11 and 2. Glendale is 11 and 2. It just felt a little odd to be keeping San Juan Hills at 8 and 7 in the top 10, even though all their losses, or most of their losses anyway, are to other top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm, right. And you mentioned Kate School. They finally broke into the top 10. We had mentioned, we weren't sure, if they were really the real deal, but they're in the top 10 now, as you mentioned, 13 and 0. So do you feel like, they have proved themselves and, their schedule was, we questioned their schedule a little bit, but what about them, kind of proved that they deserve to be there?
Just the consistent winning. If you look over on the boys' side, Tesoro is 16 and 0. They're not losing. Now, again, you can question their schedule. You can question the league that they play in and the competition. And then the same questions go for Kate. They didn't schedule a super tough out-of-conference schedule. A few games against coming south to play LA teams, and they won those, and they've won everything else, 13 and 0. So you have to give them credit for not losing. And when other teams are losing, 4 games, 5 games, 7 games in the case of San Juan. I still don't know how far Kate can go in the playoffs, but they, 13 and 0, you got to tip your hat and give them a spot in the top 10 until someone proves that they don't belong.
Right. At least they made it into the top 10 before at the end of the regular season. That's kind of cool. All right. Real quick before we head into games, the rest of the games to look out for during the regular, as we're wrapping up the regular season. What write-ups do you guys have this week on Max Lax that people can check out if they missed a game?
Wow, that's we've got a bunch.
A lot.
I wrote up 4 games just this morning. I was at the Harvard Westlake Chaminade game, so I wrote that one up. Had contributions come in from Sierra Canyon, which beat Palisades in overtime. We had Palos Verdes won its Bay League semifinal, so we wrote that one up. And what was the other one? Oh, Village Christian defeated West Ranch. That's it's number 15 and number 20 in the LA Coaches Poll. And then we had some other from Orange County that, my head's spinning just enough with the LA teams that I'm not sure which games actually got written up out of the OC. But this is that time of year where we're trying to get as much content on the site as possible. We'll talk about this in a bit, but as you mentioned, playoffs start next week. The selection committees will be making their invitations to the bracket on Sunday, and we'll obviously be reporting on that on Max Lax as well. But we're trying to provide as much context around the season as possible as those committees get together to decide who's number 1 all the way down to who's number 16 to set the matchups, and both boys and girls in both OC and LA.
Right. So if you guys missed anything at all, go check out Max Lax because they have full recaps for you guys. So Jim, let's look ahead. Like we've mentioned, we're wrapping up the regular season, but there's still some games to watch out for. Let's preview this last week. What should people be on? Keep their radars on.
Well, excuse me. Up here in the LA half, we've got 2 league championship games on Thursday. Harvard Westlake is at Loyola, so in our rankings here, that is 7-3, playing for the Mission League championship game. Loyola beat Harvard Westlake 9-7, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Also on Thursday, Miracosta, 11 in the LA Coaches Poll, is at Palos Verdes, which is our number 1 here on the SCPI rankings. That's for the Bay League Championship. The Marmonte League, which is the other of the 3 sort of power conferences in LA, wraps up on Friday. They don't play a tournament, so these last 2 regular season dates, Wednesday and Friday, are important. Westlake is at Agura on Wednesday night, and Westlake is at Oaks Christian on Friday night, and how those 2 games go will determine the Marmonte League champion. So that's in the LA side for the boys. A couple of interesting games down with the OC teams. Foothill takes an opportunity to tune up one more time with a tough opponent before playoffs, heading south to face Coronado. That's Wednesday night. Thursday, Trabuco Hills at San Clemente, and Saturday, Corona Del Mar at San Clemente. So San Clemente is another one of those teams that we had on the bubble for a while, and I think they might have squeezed in at number 10 for a week or 2 there, and then dropped out again. Tough way to end the season. They played Loyola and Palos Verdes last week, lost them both, and now they face Trabuco and Corona Del Mar to close out their season, and hopefully maybe improve their standing in the eyes of the playoff committee.
And before we head to the girls' side of things, just a reminder that next Tuesday is May 1st, and that's the first round of playoffs. So Jim and I will be doing a big preview of all of the games for you guys to keep an eye on. But let's move over to the girls' side of things, Jim. As we mentioned, there's a big one taking place tonight, St. Margaret's at Foothill. Talk a little bit about games, what other games besides that to keep an eye on.
Well, that is the biggest one. We've been sort of actually talking about that one now for a couple weeks as the 2 of the 3 power teams in the girls' side finally get to square off head to head. Thursday, Aliso Niguel is at San Juan Hills. Again, that's those teams that were down around the 7, 8, 9, 10 in our rankings, and so this is a final meeting there. Foothill, 2 days after facing St. Margaret's, travel south to take on Torrey Pines. Torrey Pines is 15-2 on the year, so that's another sort of battle of the Titans. And those were the real marquee games that I saw on the girls' side. Again, we're waiting for Sunday and figuring out what great matchups we might see in the first round, which opens Tuesday.
Exactly. So on Sunday, if you guys have any questions about matchups or any questions at all, reach out to us, because we can talk about that on our podcast on Tuesday, because as I mentioned, Jim and I will just be doing a big preview of all the games. There's 32 games, Jim?
Yeah, there's OC and LA each run 16 team brackets for boys and for girls. So that's 8 matchups for each. And first rounds are Tuesday, second rounds are Thursday, so they go really quickly. And then the semifinals are Saturday. In fact, if you are curious about the selection procedures, we have articles on how the OC picks its teams, and on the site we also have article on how LA is picking its teams this year, which is a little bit different from in past years. That's up on the site as well, along with dates and venues of where these semifinals and finals are going to be, leading up to the LAOC championship game, which is at Newport Harbor this year on Saturday. I even can't remember what that date is.
That's a nice place to have the games.
Yeah, don't think I've ever been to Newport Harbor.
It's really nice. They got a nice setup.
So anyway, yeah, the tournament's going to go really fast. The other thing that LA has done, as in case people don't understand, the CIF Southern Section does not administer the playoffs for lacrosse. They don't consider there to be enough teams on either the boys or girls side to be a championship sport with a Division I and a Division II and maybe an open division, the way they do in many other sports. So absent that, the U.S. lacrosse chapters in Orange County and LA stepped in and said, we will conduct tournaments to crown a champion every year. And they've done that now for, 10 years or more. And so it's a 16-team tournament. OC has used a selection committee and has real specific criteria laid out. LA until this year had been a little bit ad hoc with the coaches themselves debating who belonged. This year they have established a selection committee, so that committee will make the determinations of who's in and who's out. The other thing LA has done the last couple of years is offered a second bracket, an 8-team invitational. You can consider it the NIT to the NCAA. If you don't make the big dance, you can get invited to the secondary tournament. Or you can also consider it the best of the rest. If you didn't make the 16, then the next 8 teams get to play in this invitational. So that tournament runs sort of in parallel, opens on Wednesday of next week. All this is up on the site. All of it will be on the site again on Wednesday, Sunday, when the selections are announced. And then you and I can talk about as much of it as we can squeeze into a podcast on Tuesday.
Right. So don't forget to check out maxlaxoc.com, right?
Yep.
Finally got it. My gosh. Alrighty, Jim. Well, that wraps up our last regular season Laxcast. It's been a pleasure, but still lots more to come. Sunday can't get here quick enough, and neither can Tuesday. So Tuesday we will be shooting our playoff edition of the SCPI Southern Section Laxcast. So we'll be on the lookout for that. But feel free to hit us up on Twitter or in the comment section below with any questions that may come on Sunday. Once we figure out how this is all going to look. Any last words, Jim?
Yeah, Santa Margarita fans, be nice. Thanks.
Yeah, be nice. Hey, no, but we love hearing from you guys. So
absolutely, that was the best and probably most feedback that we've gotten all year. So keep it coming.
So we'll see if they're satisfied this week, huh? Let us know. All righty, you guys, have a great week. We'll see you next week for our playoff edition, Laxcast.